Does Pacific Rim hold up 10 years later? Let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us know well and others have just seen for the first time. This week we're talking about Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim from 2013, which I've seen a bunch of times and is one of my favorite movies of all time. And Herbert, you've just seen it for the first time. So what are your thoughts?
I think this is a very good movie, actually. Before I'd try and sew in some of the negatives I have about it, this is a very good movie. This is actually more entertaining than I thought it would be. The idea of giant robots versus facing giant kaijus. Not typically the type of movie that I would put on, but for some reason the whole spectacle about it, a lot of the fight scenes in the in the ocean and stuff like that was super entertaining. Obviously, it's got your kind of typical sort of simple kind of story behind it in terms of the world is at threat by these sort of big beings, and how do they respond, what do they need to do and stuff like that, which I thought was great. And you had some good characters in there, some not so good characters as well. I feel if I kind of move on to what I didn't like, is sometimes the tone of it just got a little bit silly. And I thought that brought it down, because the rest of the movie is super serious. You've got Idris Elba's character, who's sort of kind of super militant about sort of the threat that they're facing, and how serious it is, and trying to make sure everyone's falling in line in this that, and the other, and following command, and they only have a set amount of time before the funding's pulled for the project that they're working on. And then you have the scientists. And immediately, I knew that I wasn't going to like it, because it's the same guy from the movies Horrible Bosses, which I actually love him in that. And he's a great comedic actor. But in this movie, I think with some of the things that they were setting up in here, I feel, especially on the scientist side of things as well, in terms of the drifting with sort of the alien brain and stuff like that, and sort of needing to sort of kind of go out and collect sort of more alien parts, or a live alien or alien brain, for them to kind of drift a little bit more and understand a little bit more about their plans and stuff like that. It's all great. It's just got the wrong actors, and even who's the shady black market dealer that they go to.
That's Hellboy himself, Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman, yes. So even he...
Annabelle Chow, one of the great names in fiction.
Yeah.
Named after his favorite historical character and second favorite Szechuan restaurant in Brooklyn.
Okay, fair.
He says that at one point.
But even his character just didn't seem to fit the entirety of the movie. I feel the scientists and him were just not a distraction, but it just kind of took me out a little bit from the seriousness and the gravity of the situation that they were in. Yeah, I think overall it's a very enjoyable movie. Even saying that about the scientists and stuff like that, it wasn't too bad to a point that it made me dislike the movie at all or whatever. Like I said, I do enjoy the actor, so when he wasn't there, it's okay, I am familiar with him anyways, and I can kind of look past the direction they chose to go with that. But yeah, it's actually a very good movie. It left me wanting for more, actually. And to be fair, the way that they concluded it, they didn't really tease. Did they? I don't think they teased. Sorry.
It's pretty definitive, right? They closed the rift. They set off a nuke in the, I remember what they're called, the Builder's Dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody survives at the end. It's a happy end.
Yeah, pretty much. They do have a post-credit scene, but it's just Hellboy himself kind of cutting himself out of the alien. And I was a bit
mm-hmm.
He probably should be dead, to be fair. You've just been eaten by an alien. You probably should be dead. But yeah, I mean, that was just a nice little post-credit scene. But yeah, it was very definitive how they concluded it. And knowing, having obviously the knowledge that there is a part 2 behind it, I was curious as to sort of what direction they would go with. Because there were some interesting kind of ideas that they put in there in terms of obviously the scientists had drifted with sort of the alien brain. And obviously they talked about having the hive mind and stuff like that. I'd be super curious to know whether that played a bigger role in the second movie in terms of
It does, yeah. That's pretty much what it's about.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
See?
No, I've got bad news. The second movie is not great. It doesn't have any of the charm and wit and likable characters or attention to detail. It's just an action movie. So I don't recommend that one. But yeah, Pacific Rim, I think, just fires on all cylinders. Yeah. So I do agree with you that the scientists kind of a weak point. Like everybody else is really super serious about their silliness, and I enjoy that. I always like it when a movie is takes its silliness very seriously.
Mhm.
And this is like in a movie where you've got mecha fighting kaiju, and everybody looks and is named after a cartoon character, and everything is very colorful and heightened. You have to be serious. Like if everybody was going around making jokes, then it wouldn't work.
No.
Right? If there were constant one-liners and everybody is winking at the camera, then it would not be a compelling movie. But because everybody's super serious, and you've got people like Stacker Pentecost, which one of the other great names, played by Idris Elba, and who just takes it completely 100% seriously. And then you've got the kind of bland, like Riley, I think is positioned like the main character, but he's not the main character. I think Mako is, and he enables her character, and he doesn't really have one himself. But we kind of see it through the blandest person's eyes, essentially, and that kind of again grounds the world. And then we can have the silliness happening where a mech fights a kaiju by wielding an oil tanker as a sword, and I'm there for it.
Yeah.
Right. That's just that's no notes, no comments. It's good. Like that's what a movie should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Funny you said about the what's the name, Riley, about
Riley,
him
yeah.
having like the greatest arc in there. I do feel like Mariko's arc could have, because like they explore it a little bit. Obviously, like she's kind of like sort of the one that's initially assessing people, which I actually thought was like super clever in terms of like she's the one that's like assessing like the suitability of like sort of people being like his partner or whatever. And then it turns out, and like when she's like in the position where like she feels like she's ready to sort of be like one of the sort of pilots of the mech, she then has like this moment where she sort of freezes up and like she kind of like gets lost in the past and this that, and the other, and it's just like
turns out there was a reason why Stacker didn't want her in the cockpit.
Yeah.
It's almost like he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
But then she overcomes it.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
they do work through it together and they win in the end. But initially, he's vindicated, right? Stacker's vindicated in not wanting Mako in the cockpit. But then, and normally, like this is one of those movie cliches that I'm really tired of, where the authority figures are always stupid and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay if they are, right? But like the fact that it's always the case is tiring, because like anything that's always the case is it eventually overstays its welcome, right?
Yeah.
And here, the marshal there's a reason why he's strict and why he's telling people to shut up and sit down, right? And like there's always a reason for what he's doing, even if in the end he's wrong, mm-hmm. right? He's not like an annoying authority figure. It's just something I always like about movies when they kind of transcend the lazy trope, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for tropes as long as they're not lazy.
Yeah. And I think it showed again like towards the end of the movie where like he eventually like becomes chooses to be like a pilot because the other guy's like father is injured, and he says like they haven't. Well, it kind of like shows his intelligence and shows like how good of a leader he is in terms of like how he's able to like read the people around him and able to like kind of like understand and kind of manage them based on understanding. And like he's like I can't remember the guy's name in the movie, but essentially he's like the one that was like doing it with his father. He was like piloting it with his father, and then they have the fight. The father like hurts his arms.
Hercules Hansen,
yeah.
It's the father. Yeah.
I actually don't think I've like picked up on how ridiculous names were. It's just kind of like
funny. Hansen is actually a fairly common Australian name.
Okay.
Obviously Hercules and Chuck not as much, and also I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and Chuck is incorrect. It should be Chaz. Chaz is the Australian short form for Charles.
Oh, okay.
It should be Chaz Hansen, which is even better.
Yeah, that would.
So this opportunity there, but yeah, the names are wonderful without exception.
No, pretty much. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on it. I don't know. I was like, yeah, maybe just like too kind of like focused on the story essentially. But just kind of like conclude my point. It was just like that kind of like scene when they're about to like pilot the mech for like the final boss fight, and he just kind of like reads him and like says, I'm able to match with you because like I know like exactly like what you are and this and the other. And obviously like he's like kind of like let go of all his emotions, which is like a kind of like a great moment for him as well. And then that leads on to him like having a great speech as well about the canceling the apocalypse. Yeah.
Also exactly the right amount of silly. Like it's very over the top, but it's delivered in this super serious tone. Yeah. And it fits that situation. And at that point you are like if you haven't turned it off yet, if you haven't turned off the movie yet, at that point you're on board with that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like in any other movie, I think it would stick out as corny, and here it's just the right amount.
Yeah, no, it just fits. It fits perfectly. Fits perfectly. Do you feel like this could have taken itself more seriously in terms of like the ideas behind it, the tone of it, even like you mentioned this, it's got some great names, even like down to the name and stuff like that. I know, like it's big robots, big mechas fighting sort of big kaijus, but we've seen stuff like in sort of Godzilla -1 where it's like a little bit more like on like grounded, like serious tone like behind it. Do you feel like it would have benefited from it? Because that was like one of my gripes. I was like, this could be like such a great universe, kind of like live in. It's like sort of like like the idea of it is like very bleak, very dark. Like there's this like countdown for sort of every time a new kaiju is about to like pop up, and like the countdown like between them are like getting shorter and shorter. And even like the whole idea of like I don't know like how much it's explored in terms of like their plan to sort of invade the planet, or like kind of like obviously they're sending out the sort of the first one to kind of like level out the cities and sort of get rid of like the vermin that they say in the movie.
Well, what's basically said is that they just want to expand, right? And so they send through the kaiju, and every time one is killed, their blood kind of pollutes the planet. And if they do that enough times, eventually they will overwhelm whoever's living there. And by virtue of having killed all these kaiju, the planet has been terraformed into being suitable for the kaiju makers. I forget what they're called.
Yeah. So kind of like back to my original point. Do you feel like with like all the ideas and concepts introduced, would it have benefited of being a bit more of a serious movie?
So I think this tone is the tone of the movie is its charm, and it's exactly what it needs to be, and I think it just works. Like, and in some places, the scientists are a bit much and a bit silly, and maybe if they stop yelling for 2 seconds, maybe it would be more palatable. But broadly, a movie is what it should be, and it knows what it is and what it should be, and it does that. I think if the second movie hadn't been as much of a dud, and if we had gotten more expensive stuff and spin-offs and something, I think there's place for more serious spin-offs. Like you can imagine like a more grounded series that explores some aspect of the world that's maybe a bit less colorful or maybe a bit less exciting or something. But I think the charm of it is how big it is and how bombastic it is. Yeah. And if it was different, it would just be a very different movie.
No, fair point.
So the thing that really anchors this movie is this whole idea of mecha versus kaiju, right? And so two silly ideas that are awesome in their own way, but now we're smashing them into each other. Like when you first started watching this, how long did it take you to get on board with it? Like what was your initial reaction to it? Did you say, oh, this is just silly CGI monsters fighting each other? Or what was your initial impression?
Initially, I was like curious because I was like, okay, it made sense for the humans to sort of try to defend themselves in the best way possible. Like, I can imagine like them trying to like use like guns and stuff like that didn't completely work. So they were like, okay, we got to like think bigger and better. So like the whole, and like actually the opening of the movie and how like they kind of like they like explain everything like quite sort of succinctly at the start of the movie, which is like super great and it gets to the point. So at the start I was like super curious because it seemed like the aliens were like, or the kaijus were like kind of like tearing through the robots a little bit too easily.
Yeah,
but it's like
this is one battle for Hong Kong, right? Where like there's 4 mechs remaining, and 2 of them just die immediately. Like that was a little bit lame.
Even before that, when they introduced like Riley and his brother, and they're in the fight, and like the kaiju just kind of like completely rips through it and sort of like tears his brother out and stuff like that. I was curious, but I was like, okay, it's a little bit too easy for like the kaiju to kind of like burst through. But like kind of like later on, and it was more so the fight when Riley and Mariko step into like kind of like fight the kaijus once like there's been this like electrical like blackout that's happened because of some of the kaijus. It was like that fight scene that I was like, okay, this is great, because like the whole like idea of like being able to like punch a kaiju and the kaiju actually like taking damage from it, from a mech as well, because again in the movie it's shown them just like kind of like tearing through buildings and this and that, kind of like just like walking through stuff. So I was like, okay, this is like interesting. This is like great that you're able to just like slug it out and just like have this like fist fight with this kaiju. In like term with that was like the kaiju's kind of like response to that in terms of like some of the different ones, like the flying one that like uses its like talons to like kind of like claw into the like claw into the mech, like fly into the sky and like crash it into like buildings and stuff like that. Again, that was like super cool as well. So like I don't think it took too long for me to like really be on board with it, sort of what the movie was trying to do on that side. I thought it was great. I thought it was actually like super entertaining. one issue I had as well was
Yeah.
like they had this like sword that they hadn't used previously. I was like, well, you've got this sword, like why have you saved it until like the late part of the movie? Like, yeah.
Why don't you use it every time, right?
Pretty
Well, there actually is an answer, and that is that they want to avoid collateral damage, right? Because they're going to win pretty much every fight. But if they win a fight with too much collateral damage, that's still a loss, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of this war of attrition that humanity is losing, and they're already backed, like pushed to the brink. And that is why there's like people are looking for other solutions than the Jaegers and stuff like that. And that is why they use blunt weapons and also this plasma cannon thing, because the more blood they spill, the faster, the more pollution adds up over time. And the sword is a weapon of last resort because that maximizes the amount of blood that's being spilled. So there is a reason for it. I don't know how explicit they make it, but they do say that basically they care about pollution and they care about environmental damage and collateral damage. And every time they use the sword, which I think they do twice, they just go to town, right? There's no like that's the weapon of last resort. And all the other mechs have, I think the only exception is the Chinese mech that has like chainsaws.
Yeah.
It's got at the end of its arms, it's got chainsaws. So that's the one that sticks out. Everything else uses blunt weapons. And that obviously gets you mecha versus kaiju fistfights, which is what we're here for. But that's why they don't use artillery and bombers and stuff like that, right? Because by the time you kill one of these things with conventional weapons, it has actually destroyed the city. And I think they do sell the idea. Like ultimately, it's still silly, right? Like in the real world, we would just mine the rift with nukes and have like unload on them from 10 kilometers away the minute they get through the rift and whatever else, right? Like that's the realistic answer. And the pollution would be limited to this one patch in the Pacific Ocean or whatever. But given that we're here for mecha versus kaiju, I think they do a really good job justifying it. Where mechs are one of those things where you just kind of have to accept them. Like there is no way to make a mech realistic. Like it's kind of the worst of all worlds in terms of military technology. Like it's big, it stands upright. It's very expensive and whatever it's right. Like everything it does, something else does better.
Yeah.
And then you pick up on the reason for why they have to use mechs here. It's not just like it takes too long to kill a kaiju otherwise, but there was a reason given.
I'm optimistic.
And that's basically that in order to keep it from rampaging and destroying the city, you need something that is about as big and as heavy as a kaiju. And so you build like the Jaegers are built to be about as big as the kaiju, and that they can pin them in place and fight them off the coast so that they don't get to the city.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the only time I've seen a justification for mechs that actually makes sense. Because that's an adaptation to a very specific kind of threat, right? It's not like there's a reason why nothing else works.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those little details that I think make the movie work.
Yeah, I was gonna say to me, I never questioned why they would choose to use a mech over like anything else in this movie.
Yeah.
Kind of like.
And also, it's one of those things where like the movie kind of on the surface invites you to not think about it, right? But if you do think about it, then there's an answer there. Yeah. And it's maybe not the most realistic answer, but it is an answer and it makes sense and it fits together. And I think there isn't anything that you really have to ignore about the movie in order to enjoy it. Like, this is not a turn your brain off movie. In fact, all the character arcs and all the world building details and all the technology, it all hangs together and it's thought through. And that is one of those things that really fascinate me about the movie, and that is the reason why it stands out from other movies like this. That it's just like the more you think about, like it's not like that deep, but the pieces all fit together and they all make sense, I think.
And I think adding the element of sort of having the two co-pilots and them having to like kind of like be in sync and like having like to sort of drift between sort of the two of them and having like kind of like the one mind, it just added a little bit more of like the human element to it and like added sort of a little bit more jeopardy and obviously the whole like risk of like losing your co-pilot and this, that, and the other, and obviously
the human drama of being in each other's heads.
Yeah.
And so if you have baggage, you bring it. You can't leave it outside. You have to bring it to the fight. And that already ups the human drama as well, right? Yeah.
And it adds like great emotional connection between the characters as well, like sort of like the whole like father and son, when they're having like their like one last moment before like the son goes off with like the big battle, and he sort of talks about like, of course, like his son's been in his head the whole time, but he's like then talking about like things that were like maybe like unsaid and stuff like that, which was like a good character moment for them, for the both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I absolutely adore about this movie is how, and this is where kind of the fingerprint of Guillermo del Toro kind of shows up, which is how practical everything is. Now it's got moving parts, and there is a lot of CG in this, but as much as possible is practical in this, right? So, like if you remember the opening scene where Riley and his brother get woken up because a kaiju is walking on Anchorage, right? There's a suit up sequence, and like there's like for some reason there's this orange or golden fluid in their helmets. It's never explained why it's there, but it's there, and that is a real fluid that is actually in the helmets. And there's like the spine thing that kind of attaches to the back of their suits. And that is a physical thing that somebody physically attaches during the suit up scene. And they're kind of suspended in this rig, and they really built this rig. And when the cockpit drops because the kaiju lands a hit, that rig dropped by like a meter. And so the actors are really being shaken up, like in a safe way and everything, but it's really happening. They're not standing in front of a green screen. And then you add the CG around it, all the holograms and like the giant spinning cogwheels in the bottom that give like health and safety officials a heart attack, right? If you remember that one, it's like that's obviously that's CG, right? But the core of it is practical, and like the two techniques kind of come together perfectly. And because as much of it as possible, and it's got moving parts, and there's texture to it, and there's pieces to it, it all works. And then when we get this CG sequence, like this facility where they keep the mechs, obviously CG, right? It goes on forever. It's these giant halls, there's steam everywhere and lights. Obviously it's CG.
Yeah.
But because so much of it is practical, I buy it. Right, and it doesn't feel anymore like the movie's holding back. It's just we got a fully realized vision of what this complex is like, and we understand it's CG, but it's like it all feels like a real place.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, because normally you can like pick up on this stuff like that, and you're right. There was like at no point in this movie where I didn't think that any of it wasn't believable, or any of it like didn't make sense. And again, when you're talking about like the cockpit and stuff like that, like it just kind of adds a lot more to it, because you're like, to me, like I didn't think of it like that when I was watching the movie, but it makes sense because you could like kind of like feel the weight of it. You can kind of like feel the impact of everything that was happening in the movie. And again, it wasn't something that I picked up, but definitely makes sense, because like at no point was I thinking, okay, this is not believable, like this is like a bit ridiculous, or like this doesn't look great, or like this looks bad at all. So yeah, no, I think
so many CGI heavy movies have this problem where it's obviously an actor standing in front of a green screen and nothing is really there, and the actor doesn't interact with anything else, and even like attempts to kind of update that a little bit, like the volume and stuff like that. Best case scenario, it looks like a stage, right? And here I think because those two techniques are used together optimally, or as close as you can get, it's easier for the actors to give a performance that makes you believe it. And you can see that people are holding stuff in their hands, right? They're not just standing there, and then the movie is put in afterwards. Right?
Yeah, no, it adds like that level of realism that you like that we don't get in a lot of movies that we're like kind of getting at the moment.
And it's not even a case of they don't make movies like this anymore. This is a 10-year-old movie, 11-year-old. This was made in the post-Transformers world. Right, where like this whole thing about nothing is really there kind of had already been well established, and this movie just ignored everything and just did it properly.
Yeah, but then that's when you have like a director like kind of in Hellboy, where he's kind of used to using like the practical effects, and that's kind of like where his comforts are and stuff like that. So it just made sense him like kind of like meshing the two together to give us what we got in this movie.
Yeah, and that's really his style, right? Like creature effects and practical effects where possible, where things have moving parts. And like in Hellboy 2, we had this thing about how the elven crown is a physical thing with multiple pieces, and there's moving pieces as well. So this is something he always does whenever he can, and the movie is always better for it.
No, I agree. And again, it's like it's something that I didn't realize at the time, but yeah, no, I agree massively, and I kind of like hope more movies make more use of that moving forward, especially like your Marvel movies, because some of the earlier ones, you can kind of see the difference between like Iron Man in Iron Man 1 versus like Iron Man in like the later movies, where everything just kind of looks fake and everything. Like
it's basically actors standing there and doing this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the energy blast is put in afterwards, right? And that's kind of the action scene. And no, it's not about practical is always better and CG is always worse. It's like each of those two has its purpose, and they need to be used correctly. And I think this movie shows that if you use them together, you get optimal results, right?
Yeah.
And it just helps with, like, one of the things movies are supposed to do is no movie is going to convince you that this is real, right? That there are really giant robots fighting giant monsters. But the movie's job is to make you forget that it's not real.
Yeah.
And there's a difference.
It's meant to like immerse you in the world and actually like make you like feel like you're like part of it, like you're sort of living within it essentially. And I feel like that's what like the best books, the best movies and stuff like that do, is it makes you want to be part of the world that it's sort of, it's displaying to you.
And once you do, you care about the characters more than otherwise, right? If you're constantly reminded that this is not real and you can't buy into any of it, how are you going to care about any of the stakes or any of the character choices or anything like that?
Yeah.
So I think it all hangs together, right? It's all like the character arcs and the CG effect and the spectacle and the costumes and everything also supports each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said this is one of your favorite movies of all time, and I know you mentioned about like the weak scientists in this movie. Is there anything apart from that you would change, or do you feel like it's like outside of that, this is like a perfect movie?
So there are bits in the world building that are a little bit lazy, especially the whole thing about the wall. Like that's just shorthand for politics being stupid, and the people who do the real work know better. And if we just let them do their thing, everything would be better, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very well-worn trope, and it's a bit lazy at times, and it doesn't really make sense, and it also doesn't have to be there, right? Like there could be this whole thing about how like the nations who, like, this is a global effort and this only works if everybody works together, because no country can pay for this effort on its own, and ultimately everybody is in it together because the Pacific nations will be hit first, but eventually like the kaiju will get to everybody. But you could see like kaiju fatigue set in like in the Atlantic region, right? If people believe, well, they're never going to come here, so why should we pay for somebody else's problem? That would be more realistic.
Yeah.
Right? So it would be very short-sighted and everything, but that's something people would do. And you get the same basic thing, right? That the Jaeger program is being defunded, and as a result, nothing's left to stop the kaiju.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was gonna say that was like another thing that I thought about, like for the second movie, was now that the threat is perceived to be gone, and all these different countries have like these different mechs that they've been using to fight kaijus for years. Do like the government and do some of the people go back to politicking and like, again, there's like the afterworld, like the like life after kaiju, and how does that look politically? Like that was like one thing I was like super intrigued by, because like, we've like all banded together for like this great threat, and now it's gone. What comes next? Like, what do we do? And this, that, and the other. And like, this country's got like this mech, and this country's got like their mech, and it's almost like everyone's got like their own like nuke in this particular world. And it'd be like quite interesting to sort of explore if there were like politics happening, and then there's this like kaiju threat that's like coming again, and like people are like kind of like starting to be aware of it again, and like having to try and like put political differences aside and this and the other. That was just like another thing that I thought about when I was like watching the movie. Yeah.
And so I saw the sequel once kind of for completeness, and I have no desire to see it again. It's just not good. It's not the worst thing ever, but there's just nothing interesting about it, and none of the qualities of the first one really carry over. But yeah, it does go into that a little bit, right? Like that. Okay. It imagines a world that has gone through the kaiju war after the kaiju are gone. But yeah, there's not much all that interesting there. Okay. I'm quite honest. It's not great.
So is it they had the right ideas just during execution? Because to me, those are like quite interesting things to explore. But
yeah, they don't go take it to interesting places, right? Like you said, you can imagine stuff, right? You can imagine a mech war, right, where different countries have mechs, and now that the common enemy is gone, they turn on each other again.
Yeah,
and maybe not. There's a difference between countries that have mechs and countries that don't, right? Because not every country can afford a Jaeger program. Maybe there's proliferation, and there's a little bit of those things, but just not in a way that's really interesting. Yeah. You can imagine like stories that could unfold there, but I think the trouble with that is that it's very different from the appeal of the first one, and you're probably going to lose a whole bunch of the audience if you do that.
Yeah. Okay.
To go back to this one, who was your favorite character in this?
I don't think I really had a favorite, to be fair. I thought they were all like, quite solid, quite good. Like I mentioned, Mariko had like an interesting sort of introduction to it. I know you said that she kind of like overcame the trauma that she had, and she was like kind of like coached through it. But for me, it seemed like, I don't know, it wasn't like a satisfying like kind of like conclusion to sort of her story arc in that. And even like the whole, and again, we're meant to be talking about like favorite characters, so I don't want to get like too much into it. But like even like the trauma of obviously like being a young child while like all these like kaiju attacks are happening, and then just seeing Idris Elba, I felt like it could have been like a little bit more emotionally gripping if like there was like showed her like kind of like maybe like grieving over her like dead mother or like dead sibling or something like that. It would have been like a little bit more emotionally gripping than kind of just her walking through this rubble and then seeing Idris Elba coming out of his mech, essentially.
That is not a flashback, right? We're just seeing her memory, right?
We're seeing her memory, yeah.
So it is like an unreliable narrator thing where that is how she remembers it.
Mm-hmm.
That is also why she remembers the kaiju going after her specifically, which obviously does not make any kind of sense, except that's how she experienced it as a 7-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And so Stacker being there just like specifically to save her, like as this superhuman who can do anything, like that's how she perceived it at the time, and that's how she remembers it. That's why we see it like that in the flashback. I do like their relationship quite a bit, like where he basically adopted her, right? And now she's grown up and she's kind of followed in his footsteps a little bit, like as a scientist. She's devoted her life to his cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's kind of pushing against his the boundaries that he has set, and he set them for a reason, but it's ultimately a mistake, and he's holding her back. And like there's really solid character stuff here that's not reinventing the wheel, right? But it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like these characters have problems that they can overcome, and they all have reasons for doing what they do.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything that really stands out here where you just say, oh, this just doesn't make sense, or you kind of have to just roll with this, and it gets good later or something. Like this movie is like firing on all cylinders from the beginning and all the way to the end, in my opinion. And like that's reflected in the characters, like who they are and the journeys they go on and their personalities, and all just fits into the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. I keep forgetting this. I need to stop calling him Idris Elba, but Idris Elba's character,
Stacker Pentecost.
Stacker Pentecost, yeah. I did quite like as well, like in terms of what they did in showing sort of like the effects of sort of being, what would you call it, a veteran, or sort of a veteran in terms of like
the toll that being a Jaeger pilot has taken on somebody.
Yeah, pretty much. And then even like him sort of taking up sort of the role as, obviously like it's kind of obvious, you got Idris Elba in the movie. It's shown that he was a pilot and sort of in a flashback, so you kind of like presume that you're going to get it in the movie at some point, so you kind of do expect it. But the fact that he kind of like takes on that leadership role of like, okay, we're missing a pilot in this situation, there probably isn't even enough time to go and sort of go through the training program and find sort of a suitable sort of partner for him. He understands like himself in that situation, understands the other person. He's like, okay, as a leader, I'm going to go and sort of step in this situation, put my life at risk to sort of.
And normally this would be that would make me roll my eyes, like the leader kind of goes back into the trenches, right, and kind of gets back into the cockpit himself. Doesn't he have better things to do? Is there really nobody else, right? It's often quite contrived, but here I think it kind of works because he says something like, if I'm gonna die doing what I love. Yeah. Right. So either way, I die. If I do this, I die in the cockpit because I can't handle it anymore. And if I don't, then there's nobody to complete the mission, and we all die anyway. So I might as well do this. It is like kind of a bit of a cliche moment, but I think he sells it and the story justifies it.
Yeah. No, agreed. So yeah, no, like for me, no super stand-up characters in this, but again, they're all solid enough in this movie. They're all like do their job and serve their purpose really well in this movie.
Yeah. We briefly mentioned the world building as well, right? Like there's a lot of just details that kind of just justify everything, right? Mm-hmm. And the view we get into what cities look like and how they're built around kaiju corpses, and how there's a black market for kaiju parts, and how there's religions springing up around the kaiju attacks, right? Mm-hmm. I think that all also works really well.
Yeah. It does. I was actually sort of more interested to know a little bit more about like the kaiju. I know they probably give us just enough of this movie in terms of like obviously like they're trying to like invade the planet and like they're kind of like going like one by one and this and the other. I don't know what more they could have given, but I was like, once they started to like mention that it wasn't like sort of it wasn't like random sort of kaiju's being sent through, and it was actually like coordinated and targeted. I was like, oh, I'd love to explore that a little bit more, and like kind of maybe even explore sort of like the backstory behind it and stuff like that, and just like understand it a little bit more, because I was super fascinated about that aspect of it. And even when they were like drifting, when like the two scientists sort of drifted into sort of the newborn's brain, I was like, it would have like I think they show how to sort of defeat it by like saying obviously like it's reading the genetic code to sort of send them through the breach, so like it's giving them the information they need to obviously like save the day. But it might have been good to sort of understand, like I don't know, I don't know what I felt was missing, but it just would have been great to like.
But we also don't get a big exposition scene, right? Like where they just go on and on explaining the minutia of this, how this works. We get the information that we need, and we get glimpses of more. And I don't think there's any big glaring questions where there's really something missing or there's a gap in the story or something.
No.
Like the story itself works. Yeah. And then there's like occasionally kind of glimpse off to the side that there's something else there. And I think it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it doesn't get tedious, and it doesn't drown you in minutia. So I think it hits that balance really well.
Yeah, and like I said, it works for this movie. But like you're saying, like you kind of get a glimpse of it, and I was like, oh, I like the direction that they're going with this, and I would love to learn a little bit more. And it seemed like the kaijus were actually like a little bit more intelligent than just like rampaging some of the monsters, like when they sort of able to sort of like do the blackouts on sort of the mechs and like the whole cities and stuff like that, and just like the way that they were like attacking and stuff like that. It just seemed like, and like I think when they were like going towards the breach, and like the kaijus knew not to like kind of like follow, and just to like not to attack in that certain situation in like the end battle and stuff like that. It showed like some like brief glimpses of intelligence, which was actually like quite good to see as well in the movie.
Yeah, and at that point we've spent something like an hour thinking that they're just animals, and then it was you go, oh no, there's more to this. Like they're maybe not intelligent themselves, but they're programmed, right? They have been, at that point, they've been equipped with weapons specifically to kill jaegers. Right? The battle for Hong Kong, like the acid and the EMP burst, those are designed specifically to shut down the most powerful jaegers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great escalation where you think they've got the handle on this, and you've set up the rules that these are animals and they just keep getting bigger over time. But that's basically what's happening, and then you see that there's more intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention is how this is a sports movie, and how it absolutely is a sports movie. And I don't normally like sports movies, but because it's not about sports, it's okay. So I think what I mean by that is, you've got the experienced player who dropped out of the game because of an injury, and now there's a big game coming up, and he's the only hope that the team has to win the big championship. And then there's this undefeatable rival team that has no weaknesses apparently and needs to be defeated in the end. And then there's the quarterback who doesn't like the new guy because he thinks Riley is, the old guard, and the way he did things held the team back, and now that he's in charge, they've been winning again. And then there's this strict coach who tries to bring out the best in all of them and tries to get them to work together. And there's a literal locker room fight.
Yeah.
Right? And like it is a sports movie structure-wise, except it's in a different context. And I thought that was always interesting to me, that they basically take one genre, strip out all the trappings, and then bolt something else on top, and it just works. And you don't need to notice this to understand the story, right? But once you notice it, it kind of makes sense. Like you understand why, Chuck Hansen is there, and you know why, like Riley behaves the way he does, and why he's positioned the way he is, right? If you've ever seen a movie about like a retired athlete who comes back for one final tournament or something, it's this movie. I just wanted to mention that because I'm really proud of having noticed that. But yeah, that's kind of like an example of how you can take an old idea and kind of put a new spin on it, or kind of just present it differently, and it feels completely fresh again.
Yeah, like I mean, there isn't that many new stories under the sun. but it's just like the way that it's told and like the kind of like paint that you put on it, essentially. So yeah, you're not wrong with that.
And I don't know the kaiju genre well enough to know what trope, or mech genre to know what tropes they are. They've really kind of reinvented. But I think this whole thing about needing two pilots and how they pilot the mechs through interpretive dance, like I think that's an anime convention as far as I know. And here it's kind of justified, like it's kind of made, kind of reimagined and reconstructed to be believable. Like that's just how it is. So it's like a love letter to all of these different things.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't be. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they like kind of like drew some of that inspiration from some of the anime and stuff like that. Because I know like how crazy that can get in terms of like story wise and some of the like concepts that they put behind that. Yeah. So. And
like the guy who works in operations, right? Who keeps monitoring. I don't remember what his character is named, but there's like this guy, right, who's always looking at the holograms. He talks as if he was dubbed, like poorly dubbed in a 1970s Japanese movie. Like he really does. Like he doesn't show up in the list of characters here at the moment. But do you know what I mean? Which one I mean?
Yeah, I do. He was. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Like he like when he's announcing like battle updates, it sounds like he's been dubbed, but he hasn't. It's just how the actor talks.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're watching like a Japanese movie from the 80s or 70s that's been dubbed into English.
Yeah.
And that's a deliberate reference.
Is that like something that's common in Guillermo del Toro's kind of work, that like kind of inspiration?
No, that's something that's from like Japanese movies from the era. If you watch like low to medium budget Japanese movies, they had shaky dubbing, shall we say? You know, like the voice and the mouth movement didn't line up, and like the inflections were all weird. And that's how this guy talks, and it's just a little joke.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, cool. Seems like there's a lot of like really cool little like Easter eggs and like little details in there just for like people to pick up, which is cool.
Like everything is intentional in this, right? Like nothing is there because it's a cliche or just because it's a cliche. There's lots of cliches in this, but it's not just that, right? It's not just doing like because this is what these movies look like. It's everything here is for a purpose, and even if that purpose is just to be awesome. And I think that elevates the movie as well, right? Like without that, it would be a CGI spectacle. And like the reason we're talking about it now and not about like Transformers 5 or whatever, it's kind of the reason that attention to detail is there.
No, I agree. And for me, it's a shame to hear like the second one isn't as good as the first one, because like you said, like for someone like me, I'm not typically into sort of the whole like big monster fights or whatever like that. Like we had like things like Godzilla versus Kong this year, which was just a bit like kind of whatever for me. I'm not usually into that. So for a movie to have that aspect to it, and for me to be like fully invested in it, and for me to like as soon as the movie was over, start to look into sort of the next movie, and like maybe I even watched a trailer. I watched a trailer for the second one just to like see sort of what direction they were going in for the second one. So for a movie to do that, I think, you know, props to them, props to like, you know, all of the world building that they did, all of the storytelling that they did, and some kind of like all the ideas and concept that they like put inside this movie to make me curious to want to know where the story goes next.
And there's a big achievement for a movie, right? If it leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
And I think it also really kind of debunks this whole idea of just turn your brain off and enjoy the movie. Because this movie doesn't require you to turn your brain off, but it's still lighthearted spectacle. Right? It's not like a deep study of anything. It's still spectacle, it's still fun, it's still a thrill ride. But it also all makes sense, and you like the characters, and they've got stuff going on. Like every character has a thing. And there's an overall there's themes to it, and like every fight is different, and there's a choreography to every fight that is its own thing and recognizable, and you're never bored with the action.
And it's progressively getting bigger as well throughout the movie.
That's a progression to them, right? But also there's very little repetition, right? So every fight is just its own thing. And whenever I see something like Godzilla X Kong or something where it's just stuff for 2.5 hours. Like at that point, I wish I was watching Pacific Rim, because it's just better on every front, and you don't have to sacrifice fun for good characters or vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. And this movie just like if anybody's ever thought that, just watch Pacific Rim and see how not true that is. and how a truly good movie can deliver on all fronts and not just CGI fights, and how the CGI fights get better because you care about the people, right?
Like you said, like, there's nothing super deep here or like super groundbreaking in terms of like what they're doing here. It's just like they understand that they've just like meshed together sort of the huge spectacle that people want to see with just like a simple enough story for you to kind of like follow and get behind. So this is all we ask for. So new movies. It's a common trend in a lot of like the films that we talked about, from this year in terms of like, yeah, I guess, but like the story is just like super weak, or like the story's not been thought through.
Or the action is not imaginative, or it's all phoned in, or it's all just cliches. Like movies like Pacific Rim show you that movies can be better. And like this is not a masterpiece, right? A masterpiece is not. This is not The Godfather. This is not Citizen Kane or any movie that would be considered high art or something, or sophisticated cinema or anything like that. But here, every piece just works, and it's there for a reason, and it's there to support the other pieces, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's just what I would call a proper movie, and that is why I call it one of my favorite movies, because there's flaws here, right? Like no movie is perfect, but there's nothing that breaks the movie or that drags it down, or where you say, well, this had potential, but like there's no aspect to this movie where you have to say that. You don't have to make excuses for it. You don't have to ignore anything. It just works.
It's like Legos, building blocks. It's like building on top of each other, as opposed to just
but like a Lego set is more than just a couple of Lego pieces stuck together, right? Right? They have to. There has to be intentionality. They have to support each other, and so on and so forth. And all too often, like we have just a bunch of movies like this. On the action front, we had Godzilla x Kong, we had Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. In the horror front, we had things like Imaginary, Night Swim, where you just say, well, there's just no idea here. There's nothing here where you say, wow, this is cool. And this and no intentionality. It's just a collection of pieces, and obvious pieces usually. And as a result, but then the counter often is, but it's just a movie, or what do you expect, or this is how these movies are. No, it can be better.
Yeah. No, agreed. Do we have any other points in this one?
I think I've said my piece. Any other insights, comments, impressions of Pacific Rim?
No, I think I've said my piece as well. Very enjoyable movie. I do recommend people to go out and check this out if you haven't already. This is a great movie. Again, it's a shame that it's not a bigger franchise, because I would have loved to have seen, more. I would have hoped that part 2 would have been better, and I would have hoped to have seen more. And who knows, maybe they might revisit it one day and try to revive it, because again, there is a lot of good setup. There's a lot of good ideas in here. But yeah, overall, very good movie. Very, very good movie. So definitely one to watch if you haven't seen already.
Agreed.
So that's everything for today. Thank you very much for working with us and watching this. Of course, let us know your thoughts down below. Have you seen Pacific Rim? What are your thoughts? What did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ciao.
Bye-bye.